Hey, John. This is Jeff Kletsky. I've got a question. Earlier, you were talking about the flow rate during extraction not going below 1 milliliter per second. Uh, when I typically pull what I now am reasonably confident is somewhere between a light and a medium light roast, using something like LRV2 or the Leva profile, the flow starts out when that pressure first comes up. I'm looking at a graph here, between half and 1 milliliter per second. Within 5 seconds, it's at one. Within 10 seconds, I'm sort of at my typical target of between 1.5 and 2. Is that outside what you are finding to bring out the best flavors? Greg, you're here.
So Londinium is not a profile that I can apply these rules to. Okay, because
Okay.
what Londinium does is a pressurized pre-infusion, and so it tries to have that kind of GS3 puck slamming at the beginning because we found that a very fast saturating of the puck tends to compress it much faster and tends to give you much denser, thicker start. So that's what Damien is doing at the start of Londinium. That's why the pump is, blasting with water. But Damien is compensating for the defects of that approach, which is generally if you keep up that water hammer, then you're going to start channeling. So what he does is he quickly hits the puck with water, so it compresses, and then immediately backs off on the pressure down to 3 bar. So that the puck does have, the 3 bars is actually the same pressure that the blooming also stops pre-infusion at, because that 3 bar seems to be a good amount of pressure to augment capillary action pre-infusion with a pressurized pre-infusion and get the water through the puck more evenly faster. Okay, so a bit of pressure during pre-infusion seems like a good idea if you want to get a more even extraction. So that's one of the reasons I think blooming gets us the high refractometer readings, is because of the pressurized pre-infusion. So back to Londinium. Londinium has stolen that idea from blooming. And it's great. So he's doing fast pre-infusion like the tradition, but then backing off and doing a 3 bar hold like a blooming. And during that time, you're not really getting leakage. What you're getting is like sludge, mayonnaise coming off the bottom because the puck has been so compressed. So that flow rate at the beginning isn't actually what I would call extraction. That is leakage from pre-infusion. And that flow rate should be really low. I mean, that should be down in the 0.3, 0.5 range. So you're getting a beautiful thick top to your espresso. And then as he comes out of that, then he pulls a kind of traditional espresso, which has much less body. But, when you sip your espresso, you get whatever's floating on top on your tongue and your lips. And so the perception of Londinium shots is it's super creamy because he had that hard start with the pressure hold, which created a floating mayonnaise cap on his espresso, but then ended it with a proper espresso. So I think of Londinium profile in the Decent as the best expression of the tradition, because we're getting the benefits of that ultra thick start, but we are still getting a proper pre-infusion, and we're still in the blooming idea of using pressurized pre-infusion for a faster, more even one. And I totally could see for a light roast that Londinium would get you better flavors. I mean, just contrast it for a second with the Slayer shot, which when I first got to Decent, I thought was the way you should work with light roast. So a Slayer shot takes a puck and puts water slowly onto the top, let's say 2 mils per second, for typically like 35, 40 seconds. And at the end of that time, the puck is fully saturated, pressure rises. The nice thing about that is if you've got a light roast that needs a lot of water contact time because of poor solubility, it addresses that sort of, because the problem is that it actually takes 35 seconds before you actually start to see water on the bottom with the Slayer shot, if you're looking at it. In fact, you end your Slayer pre-infusion when you see water on the bottom. So what that means is the top has been pre-infused for 35 seconds, and the bottom has been pre-infused for 1 or 2 seconds. And there's a gradient between them. So what you get out of that Slayer technique is a extremely uneven pre-infusion shot. So I would even say that you get a top that's over-extracted and a bottom that's under-extracted. So it's kind of like the worst of all worlds, as far as I'm concerned. And it really bothered Rayo that I, at the time, liked the Slayer shot, because he would give me these incredible light roast Kenyans that I just channeled like hell. And the Slayer technique was the only one I could make a shot of any sort that didn't have a pressure that did this. That long pre-infusion let me get some sort of pressure. So he developed blooming because, or the insight in blooming was to figure out how much water the puck should have, and then use time, capillary action, and a small amount of pressure to get the bottom of the puck wet as quickly as possible. And when you do a blooming, you'll see like 3 seconds into the pre-infusion, the water will go, and then it stops, right? And then you get a few drips, like 6 grams of drips. Londinium is doing kind of the same thing, right? That it's hitting it and then stopping the pump, and the bottom of the puck is wet within like a second or two of the top of the puck. So for a light roast, Londinium would be kind of the only lever profile that I would endorse, because Londinium is giving light roasts an even pre-infusion, a fast, equal pre-infusion, and enough time during that pre-infusion to actually address the solubility of light roast. So I'm glad to hear you're getting good results with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with it. I'm getting, I don't know how much I trust my refractometer, but with a centrifuge, Tago, I'm getting about 22% EY.
Cool.
And this is La Cabra, Passenger, light to light roasts, typically Ethiopian or Kenyan these days.
Yeah, are you getting any crema?
Sort of. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting no crema.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the pretty until I stir it.
Yeah, it's a light roast, so I wouldn't expect much. But it's nice to hear you do. I mean, it's great to take a light roast bean and still be able to make something that looks like a traditional espresso, but have it taste good.
Yeah, I mean, I've been happy. I'm always looking for how can I improve it. So I may try to poke around and see if I can bring up that initial extraction phase rate a little bit.
Yeah, or you could also just lengthen that 3-bar pre-infusion phase by 5 seconds. See what that does to the flavor.